Greeny, you know how to win at business?
Tell me how.
Show up early for meetings. That way everybody who's only on time looks like slackers.
Well, I got a better way to win at business.
What's that?
Instant free nights at La Quinta Inns and Suites. You can show up with no advance reservation and redeem your La Quinta Returns loyalty points for a free night that same night just by using the La Quinta app.
I feel like I'd win at business more than you.
I'd cream you at business.
Impossible. I'm undefeated at business.
Go to LQ.com now and prepare to win at business.
This is the best of Mike and Mike podcast. Subscribe now by going to the Listen tab in the ESPN app.
The best of Mike and Mike.
Back and better than ever. Mike and Mike presented by Progressive Insurance. Our guests on the Shell Pennzoil Performance Line. Full steam ahead to what will be a long holiday weekend for some, and the busiest few days of the year for most NBA teams. As before we get to the fourth, we have the first and free agency underway. Golic, a mad dash for cash as the rest of the basketball world tries to find a way to chase down Golden State.
This is always the fun thing at midnight, at 12:01, who gets contacted. And obviously those are the guys that get contacted are the ones that are going to get usually the most money. So it is that mad dash to create these super teams, as everybody wants to talk about. With Chris Paul going to Houston, what else can they get? Where's Gordon Hayward and Paul George going to end up? Again, some of these aren't free agent moves. They're going to be trades, but we all know moves that are potentially going to happen. Paul Millsap's name jumping into the fray as far as those big free agents, where he's going to go. Blake Griffin, those two visiting the Phoenix Suns, a team that, threw the season last year to try and get better. So this is the part when you talk about the offseason being better than the regular season. Nobody talked about the Phoenix Suns in the regular season until we talked about them tanking. So now, their fans can be excited. We're talking about them possibly going out and getting some high-price free agents.
Yeah, the regular season is about losing, and the offseason is about trying to win. And I think there's something that is just intrinsically pleasing about that for sports fans everywhere. Even people who couldn't care less about the Phoenix Suns. I think if you're a basketball fan, you'd much rather be reading about the Phoenix Suns trying to find a way to sign. Could they put together Millsap and Blake Griffin with Josh Jackson they just drafted? Right. And boom, like in the blink of an eye, you go from, and again, they were making themselves the worst team in basketball. They didn't necessarily have to be otherwise. But you go from being one of the 2 or 3 worst teams in basketball to a team that, while they may not challenge for a championship, and that team wouldn't, I'd like to go watch them. If they're coming into my city on a Tuesday night, hey, I'll buy a ticket. I want to go see that. I mean, to me, that's all good. I don't mean to keep rehashing an argument I continue to have over and over and over again, and I continue to lose just because no one agrees with me.
Right.
But if forgetting everything else, if you are a basketball season ticket holder, let's just say you're in New York. That's where we're close to, and that's where I live. So you've got your Knicks season tickets. So you're going to get every team in the NBA coming through. How many of them are you excited to see? How many times do you say to yourself, wow, I'm really looking forward?
Yeah.
Not that they can win a championship, but this is a game I'm looking forward to going to watch.
Because you're certainly not excited to see your Knicks. So, you got
right
the
now.
other team. No, I mean, that's one of the other teams, unfortunately. You wait to see, what bad can they do. But who's going to jump in? Are the Celtics going to do what a lot of people think they're going to do? Are the Heat going to jump into this thing? That's the beauty of this right now. And again, the maxes are maxes. The amount of money that you can give to a player, whether he's staying with his home team to make more, going somewhere else. Those guys, it's just going to come down to A, if they want to leave their team to get less money somewhere else, depending on what they get offered, and then B, where do they want to go? Then it comes down to what's your personal preference as a free agent.
Well, you and I sat together in the makeup room before we came in here, and we watched a really good exercise by Tom Penn.
Oh, my gosh.
Our basketball, cap insider, front office insider with Kenny Mayne on the Overnight Sports Center, in which he did a magnificent job breaking down all the different permutations of what could happen. And clearly, if the entire exercise we're in the midst of here is to ask the question, can a team be created that you would all of a sudden say there's a legit championship contender? If our belief right now is that there are really only 2 championship contenders, let's put Cleveland in it, even if we don't think they really could beat Golden State and they didn't. Let's say for the sake of this discussion there are 2. The way he put it together, there is a scenario in which Boston could clearly become a third. If there's a very real path for Danny Ainge and the Celtics to adding Hayward and George.
Right.
If that happens, then the Celtics are a legitimate candidate to win an NBA championship. Agree?
I I think I agree. Legitimate. Legitimate. Yeah,
they're right there.
It depends on your definition of legitimate. Would I favor them in any game? No. But
against. Let's start with this. Could that team beat Cleveland as currently constituted? If Cleveland doesn't add Dwayne Wade if he gets bought out, or Carmelo Anthony if he gets bought out,
they basically stay the same.
As currently constituted,
adding Paul George and Hayward, with that group, they absolutely. Now we have to see who they have to give up to get them,
right?
Because there is about the starting group, and one of the reasons I think Golden State is so good. We keep talking about the 4 stars on that team, but they have some incredible ancillary players as well, of which one they may lose. And Andre Iguodala, we'll have to wait and see about that. Yes, they would have a much better chance than this past year to win the championship. I certainly wouldn't favor them, but maybe it would certainly be a better series. And could they potentially beat Cleveland? Yes.
The thing about Boston is they have so many tradable assets, including draft picks.
Well, that's the thing
people want.
Because Celtic fans are living for the now. So they would rather see you give up those draft picks, keep this team together. If you're going to get a Hayward and get a Paul George, they'd be like, okay, let's win now. Hey, we were number 1 seeds last year. I know it didn't seem like a number 1 seed, and we didn't really pressure the Cavaliers at all. But we get those 2 guys. Let's not give up the rest of our team. Let's give up some of those draft picks, of which Danny Ainge correctly said you can never have enough draft picks because they're all assets and can be used. And that's what fans will want. Team has to think more as well as not only the present but the future as well, and what those draft picks could be by them scouting already what the next couple of drafts are potentially going to look like. But fans are going to want it now. We get these 2 players. Let's win right now. Give up those draft picks. Let's keep some of our players. And here's the other thing. If you're going to bring in high-priced players, and Tom Penn was doing it on the board, his work of the board was magical, about the luxury tax you're going to have to pay, I'd throw that one out the window. You're going to pay it.
Oh, yeah.
Okay?
Oh, yeah.
If you're going to lock in some big-name guys, I know you have to look at that number, but you better look at it kind of quickly and just know that you're going to write a monster luxury tax check if you want to get that type of team that's going to compete for a championship.
Well, I'll tell you, Van Gundy actually said exactly that. He was on with us yesterday when your son was here with me, and he said exactly that there's going to be a separation in the NBA that is going to be very clear between owners who are willing to pay that and owners who are not.
That's right.
And if you have owners who are not, they're going to have a much harder time. They're going to have to genuinely just strike gold.
Right, exactly.
In the draft. I look at a team like Philadelphia. They're not going to pay a luxury tax because their stars are Embiid, Kidd, and Markelle Fultz. Look in Minnesota. Jimmy Butler's getting paid big money, but not colossal money.
Right, and nobody else.
And the rest of the stars are young kids, so they're not paying. Now, can they become a legitimate championship contender in that window? That remains to be seen. All right, let's get into this here. Let's go off the top, heading into the final day of the month. Mike, and I like this stat.
Yeah.
There have been 1,068 home runs hit in the month of June. This could set a record.
Oh, it's good. That would mean there would have to be no home runs hit tonight to not even tie the record, and it's not going to happen. They're behind the record by 1. It'll get broken. Some stats on home runs this month. There have been 34 leadoff home runs this month.
I think the Cubs had all of them.
Yeah, how about it?
Didn't they?
Yeah, Rizzo. 3 more than any other calendar month in baseball history. There's been at least 1 player with multiple home run games in all but 1 day this month. June 27th is the only day somebody hasn't had multiple home runs. It's really been incredible what's gone on. There's going to, right now, the record for home runs in a season at 5,693. The pace this year is over 6,100. That's the pace. There's been an average of 2.53 home runs hit per game this season. The record is 2.3. 42% of all runs scored this season have come from home runs. That's the highest percentage in Major League history.
So there's the statistic.
Right.
And if we want to get into this, and I don't know how interested fans are in it or not, but you say to yourself, wait a minute, the steroid era ended. Why are we hitting home runs at this rate? Well, there's your number right there, 42%. Just think about that. Almost 1 out of every 2 runs that are scored in a baseball game come by a home run because everyone is swinging for the fences on every single at-bat, and that's why they either hit a home run or they strike out. And candidly, that's the problem with baseball now.
Right.
You want more home runs without that statistic, and that's not really easy to find. You know, your son was making an interesting point that his childhood, his youth, was at the heart of the McGuire-Sosa era.
Right.
So he sort of grew up at a time when in baseball, that's what happens. People hit home runs like crazy. But you didn't have this volume of strikeouts and all that, so the rest of it didn't feel kind of boring and empty. So it's a little bit of good news, a little bit of bad news, I think, if you're a baseball fan. Here's some terrible news. The Nationals blew a ninth-inning lead to the Cubs Thursday. Their bullpen blowing a lead is not really news.
No.
But what happened to Trey Turner definitely is.
Yeah, Trey Turner got hit by a pitch, busted his wrist, and is going to miss some serious time. Trey Turner has, I think, 3,237 stolen bases this year.
Look at that.
It's just, that, oof, right on the wrist.
We're just watching the highlight right there. That catches him right in that bone where the wrist is.
Yeah.
That is an ugly-looking play.
What do they miss? He's the only player in the majors to rank in the top 10 in hits, runs, stolen bases since last year's All-Star break. So as far as the bullpen, you're right. They've now have Major League high 6 losses this season when entering the ninth inning with a lead.
Off the top.
Another loss, and this is just an unimaginably sad story if you look at it this way. The day that you get called up to the major leagues, obviously it's not a day I've ever experienced, nor did you. You played football.
That first game, when you get to play that first game.
Phone call, you're going to the show. Yeah. Dustin Fowler, Yankee prospect, gets called up. He jumps on a quick flight, races to Chicago as fast as he can. He's playing right field last night because Aaron Judge is DHing. And in the first inning, the bottom of the first inning of his first major league game, he hasn't even come to the plate. Mike, for those who didn't see it, tell everybody what happened.
Well, he ruptured his patellar tendon in his right knee. He went full bore for a foul ball right by the stands and slammed his knee into the wall. But there's a little electrical box that Joe Girardi was talking about that his knee went into, and he ruptured his patella. And the telltale sign, he tried to walk it off, which is what most guys, a lot of guys would try and do. But the telltale sign of that rupture is you can't straighten your leg. It's that tendon that connects the tibia below your knee to your quadriceps, your big muscle, your quadriceps above the knee, and that thing ruptured, so you can't use your quad to straighten your leg out. There's the full tear, there's a partial tear, and then there's that jumper's knee, that tendonitis. But this, a tear. He's going to have surgery, I believe, tonight. 6 to 12 months recovery time for a young kid who is a fast runner as well. So what effect will this have on the rest of his career? He's young. You hope he can heal well from it, but very, very tough injury to have at any age, let alone right when you're trying to make your move in the bigs.
First inning of his major league debut, he was due to have his first at-bat to lead off the second. Terrible.
Yep.
Booger McFarland actually had his career ended by this exact injury. He gave us a little prognosis/diagnosis. We'll get to that in a couple of minutes. NBA free agency, as we were discussing, Mike, begins 12:01 a.m. Eastern time here on July 1st, and there are huge names out there to be had.
So you can't sign until July 7th. From the 1st through the 6th, the moratorium period, you can talk about deals.
Yeah, we've seen how that's worked out.
You can agree to deals and that whole thing. One difference this year, restricted free agents can now sign offer sheets during this moratorium time. But, yeah, you'll see it, at midnight, 12:01, guys are already going to be getting called. Visits are going to be set up. This is setting up potentially to be a very interesting offseason on what team is going to get the most. And there's still the big questions out there, one of them being Carmelo Anthony. Will he ever get bought out? What's going to happen there? Who does he end up with? But this has been a very intriguing offseason, which is going to get a whole lot more interesting at midnight.
And
off the top,
the person making the decision for the Knicks, as far as all this is concerned, currently is Steve Mills. But could his the replacement for Phil Jackson, I guess, be David Griffin, deposed in Cleveland, Mike, but now our reporting suggests he's emerged as a candidate in New York.
Well, that was one of the first people you thought of. He was denied permission to talk to Orlando, so he was in Cleveland. He missed out on 3 potential GM jobs, while he was dealing with the end of his tenure in Cleveland, not allowed to talk to anybody else. I know everybody was talking about Masai Ujiri, the GM from Toronto, but you're talking about the possibility of draft picks involved there, so the Knicks seemingly don't want to get involved. Then the word about John Calipari, that his people supposedly contacted the Knicks for him to be the president and the head coach, which he's denying. And, oh, by the way, we'll have him on at 8:05 Eastern this morning. I believe he's in Egypt right now.
He is.
So the Knicks continue to be just a scratch your head type of story right now.
We will continue as we go. That's a very busy off the top. Mike and Mike presented by Progressive Insurance. You can test drive Snapshot. See how much you could save before switching to Progressive. Visit progressive.com/snapshot. And if all that isn't good enough, don't forget that tomorrow night, exclusively on ESPN and on ESPN Deportes, it's the Battle of Brisbane. Manny Pacquiao defending his WBO welterweight title live, aiming for his 60th career win, taking on Australia Australia's undefeated #1 world-rated contender, Jeff Horn. The Battle of Brisbane, I almost did it again.
There you go.
The Battle of Brisbane, not the Brattle of Brisbane.
No.
But the Battle of Brisbane, presented by Straight Talk Wireless, tomorrow night, July 1st, 10 Eastern, exclusively on ESPN, ESPN Deportes, and the ESPN app. And Mike, when your son was with me yesterday, we had Teddy Atlas on from Australia, and the enthusiasm in his voice. For the people who love the sport, this is genuinely an exciting opportunity. You may have seen that we announced that there were going to be 2 more big-time championship fights coming up on ESPN in August. And Joe Tessitore will be with us in the next hour. He's in Australia to call the fight, and he's our lead play-by-play guy for boxing. And he and I were talking about it a little bit as well. This is a great opportunity for big-time fights on what now is sort of considered free over-the-air TV. Granted, ESPN is cable.
Well, listen, you're still paying you're not doing anything more than paying your cable bill if you have ESPN. You're not doing pay-per-view. You don't have to hit that extra button and pay that extra money outside of your normal cable bill, which you're paying now anyway. So, yes, a lot more eyes can be on it. And that's where boxing is right now. Boxing needs to go back to get the exposure, get more eyes on it to try and get and rise up again, because we've talked about it a ton, where boxing was, where horse racing was, and where they both are right now.
Yeah, and Teddy brought it up. He used a good expression for it yesterday. He said, boxing has turned into sort of like a Super Bowl kind of thing, where once a year you get one really big fight, and everyone's excited. All the movie stars want to be there and everything else. But then the rest of the year, it basically disappears from view for everyone except for those who are really hardcore, passionate fans of the sport. And the only way you develop others who are casual fans of the sport is to give it to them in a way they don't have to work for it.
They got to see it. Yeah. Exactly right. They can just flip to a station. They know a station to get to. They know what the numbers are to get to that station, and they get to see a fight.
So self-serving, perhaps, because it's here at ESPN. But regardless of where it was, I'm excited for this because you and I are old enough to remember a time when boxing was on regular TV, and that's how you fell in love with it, and I fell in love with it, watching Ernie Shavers and Larry Holmes and Ken Norton and guys like that fighting in the 70s, and then Roberto Duran and Sugar Ray Leonard and Marvin Hagler and Thomas Hearns and guys like that in the 80s. And we don't have guys like that now. There were great fighters right now, but no one knows who they are. Those guys were megastars in that era.
Absolute megastars. So, and again, the monster fights will still be on pay-per-view, but more casual eyes will be able to see boxing and maybe grow to, grab on to some of these boxers and who they are and what they represent, and then follow them even if it were to pay-per-view.
All right, so Mike and Mike presented by Progressive Insurance. Great guest. We mentioned Joe Tess will be with us from Australia off the top of the next hour on the Shell Pennzoil Performance Line. We'll see how its long-distance function works. John Calipari, Stephen A. Daryl Morey, GM of the Rockets, also coming up this morning. So let's let you comment on the Chris Paul stuff. You weren't here yesterday as we talked about it all morning long. Chris Paul and James Harden, it's an interesting dynamic.
It is.
In that backcourt with, it's 2 guys and 1 basketball.
Well, I mean, how
does that work?
You had 2 guys and 1 basketball when Harden, even though coming off the bench in Oklahoma City with Russell Westbrook, so you had 2 guys that liked the back, and we saw, that. You go back and see how that relationship was, and we know what D'Antoni had talked about with Harden. He wants him to double his assists, and Harden led the league in assists, led the league in turnovers as well. So I guess you're talking about a sharing situation, or Chris Paul. Really, you think of Chris Paul as the man with the ball in his hand, and we'll see how Harden adapts back to 1 year of, okay, I want you to handle the ball. I want you to double your assists. I want you to be the man with the ball, to, okay, now I want you to be the off guard. We know you'll shoot. There's no doubt about that. But, let's see how it works. I thought he did a great job moving the ball around. A lot of turnovers, but so Russell Westbrook just won the MVP and was second in the league, was only about, 20 or 30 turnovers. They were in the 460s and the 430s as far as turnovers were concerned. So it's not like Westbrook was a clean player as well, and he was your MVP, and Harden was a runner-up. So they both were getting the job done. When you handle the ball that much, you get turnovers. So I guess that's the thought process. He doesn't now have to handle it as much, and it's also in the hands now of a future Hall of Famer and Chris Paul. So let's build something here. The impressive part to me with Morey and hearing the sound was that he remembered who the other guys on the team were, because they traded everybody away. Right. I mean, so that's going to be the end. You have to have a team around these 2 guys. At some point, these are 2 guards, so you got to have a team around them. So let's see where else they go. As constituted right now, can you say they're better than last year? Well, sure, when you had a guy like Chris Paul. As constituted now, do you say they're the second-best team in the conference now? No, I'm still giving that to San Antonio. I'll still wait to see what else they're going to do. And I still think it would have been more intriguing had Chris Paul gone to San Antonio, given the fact in playing with Kawhi Leonard of where that may have gone. Because Kawhi Leonard and Chris Paul don't play the same position, much like Harden and Chris Paul do.
How intriguing would you feel it was if they now add Paul George?
Well, then Paul George certainly is an X factor because of the defensive side that he can play, because everything is measured against Golden State. We know he can score offensively. Defensively, that's where you're going to pick up some that added bonus when you're playing a team like Golden State. So, and I know they're going to try and do that. I know they're not satisfied with where they are right now. It was a start for them. So that would obviously be a monster pickup.
Is there a way that this winds up helping Harden as well? I don't want to get too deep in the weeds on the analytics, but just put it this way. Only 10% of Harden's three-point attempts last year, and he shot 1 million threes because that's all they shoot in Houston is threes.
Right.
Only 10% of his shots qualified as wide open threes. That's the lowest percentage of wide open threes of anybody who took 100 threes last year. So you have to believe with Chris Paul on the floor with him, James Harden's going to get more open looks. So that has to help.
More open looks, but less shots than he had. So that's what we see. Listen, he's done this before. Again, when he was in Oklahoma City, this position before. So it's not like it's foreign to him. Not like he can't do it. But again, it's coming off of a year where the coach really emphasized him with the ball, him, getting everybody else involved, and now going back, to the other position as Chris Paul takes over.
The best of Mike and Mike.
All right, so you tell me, the staff puts up here, why is free agency at 12:01? Doesn't July 1st start exactly at 12 o'clock?
Yeah, I mean, it starts at 12 o'clock, so 1 second after 12 o'clock, you're into the 12:01 minute. So I would imagine that's
my point is,
kind of it.
Wouldn't you think that someone working on our show right now would have something better to do to occupy his or her time? Some better way to direct that energy and focus than delving into that.
You know every person on the show. Does this shock you at all?
Probably not.
Not one bit.
That might actually be the most significant contribution that is made
right
on this screen.
Go ahead.
No, nothing. I mean, it's just the way it is. That's Stanzik. That's a picture of Stanzik for those of you watching on ESPN2. He's the one who's sitting there thinking, guys, it really is in 12:01 if you think about it.
It is Stanzik, and I got into a back and forth with him last night on email, and so he likes to do this stuff. He says, you're the one, Greeny, that gets mad about a 100% chance of rain.
I do. If you ever tell me that there is a 100% chance of rain, and then it doesn't rain, and you say, well, stuff changed, that's what I hear all the time. Well, no, everything changed. The wind blew in the opposite direction or whatever it is that changes the weather.
Mother Nature, man.
My question to you is, what is your definition of 100%? If you're telling me there's a 100% chance of rain, you are telling me in advance that can't happen. There's no amount of wind that could possibly blow. There's no act of God that could take place that will say it will not rain. If there is any chance it might not rain, then the only possibility is there is a 99% chance or less of rain.
Okay, I'm begging that we don't get back into that discussion. I'm begging, Stanzik, you stop writing on this board all the stupid stuff that you're writing.
Yeah.
Because I'm not looking at it anymore. It's ridiculous. I'm going to go to this tweet that I want Kevin to explain. Kevin tweets in, you guys love to use the Knicks as a punchline, and it's not right. Kevin, there's 140 characters in Twitter. Use all of them to tell us why we shouldn't, okay? That's all I will have to say right now. Give us a reason to not use the Knicks as a punchline.
I mean, I think at this point the Knicks are using the Knicks as a punchline.
Yeah.
I mean, if I don't even know what to say. If James Dolan does patter in the middle of one of his JD and the Straight Shots shows in between songs, he's making Knick jokes. I mean, I don't know what else he's doing. It's the most topical thing. Yeah. Candidly, it would be the most interesting thing about the evening. So, yes, it strikes me that if you're looking up punchline right now in the dictionary, it should have the Knicks logo. All right, coming up. Not even coming up.
No,
but right
we're going
to
actually do it.
Here's where I'm going right now.
Yeah.
So there is one of the most famous baseball people of all time, immortalized, of course, in fiction and film, Moonlight Graham. June 29th, 1905, was the night that Moonlight Graham wouldn't have been at night because they wouldn't have had lights in the stadium. It would have been in the day. But June 29th, 1905, was the day that Moonlight Graham played but did not bat in his major league debut. So, June 29th, 2017, 112 years later, we had the story last night of Dustin Fowler. And listen, I sincerely hope that Fowler will rehab this injury and he'll come back better than ever next year. And there's certainly every reason to think that he may. But boy, was this an awful thing to see. You know, I don't like to use the word tragedy in the sports context because nobody died, and it isn't a tragedy. But you know what? This is a 22-year-old kid who has worked at baseball for the entirety of his life, has the moment of his life. He got the call up so quickly that his family wasn't able to make it to Chicago in time to see him. So they were wherever the Yankees are going tonight. That's where his family is going, Houston. So his family was meeting him in Houston so they could watch their son play in the big leagues because that was the last game last night of their series at U.S. Cellular Field, or whatever they call it now, on the south side of Chicago. And in the first inning, he is scheduled to lead off the second. In the first inning, playing right field, he runs into the right field fence, the one bordering on the right side on the foul line there, and he bangs into an electrical box. And, Mike, just give me, again, 30 seconds on what he did to his knee.
Well, the patella tendon that runs, connects the tibia, the lower leg, runs up through the knee and then connects the quadriceps. He ruptured it. He tore it. So the telltale sign of a torn, complete tear there is you can't straighten your leg. And you saw he tried to walk on it and he couldn't. He couldn't straighten his leg because you can't fire your quad to straighten your leg. That's one of the signs. At that point, you kind of hope, is it a partial tear? But certainly from the looks of that, not at all, because there's the rupture, the full tear, there's a partial tear, and then there's tendonitis, which some people know as jumper's knee, a real painful in the front of your knee from jumping and activity and not enough rest. That's painful. Imagine this, rupturing that. I mean, that's major surgery. That's immobile for, I think, 4 to 6 weeks. That's a 6-month at least rehab stint you're going to have. You start looking at the glass half full, which I know is almost impossible to do. We talk about our own Booger McFarland had this and it ended his career. He was 31 years old. How old is
22.
Fowler?
He's 22.
So you have youth on your side, which hopefully will be a benefit as much as it possibly can about coming back from this and rehabbing and such, and see where he can go. He's a guy that uses his wheels, obviously, the way he plays the game, and that's what got him into this. I mean, he was sprinting for that ball. I mean, imagine, it's your first game. I mean, you want to imagine a guy going hard for a ball all the time.
First inning of his major league debut.
First game, you got to be so hopped up, and he is flying for that ball. And then when it's going, foul, he can't slow down enough before he rams his knee into the wall, into the electrical box. So that is tough. And, I mean, I don't know if he heard a pop with it. A lot of times you'll hear that if he was just wanting to try and say, okay, no, it's not bad, I'm going to try and walk it off. I mean, that's kind of, you either know and you hit the ground and you grab it, or you're like, okay, man, I hope it's not as bad as I think, and you try and walk it off, and you just saw he could put no pressure on it at all. So surgery, and then you immobilize and you start the rehab, and you hope the kid can come back.
For what it's worth, it's the same injury Victor Cruz had, and he was never the same again. Booger McFarland, again, he was a 31-year-old football player. This is a 22-year-old baseball player, so it doesn't have to be exactly the same. But Booger texted us the following, quote, Fowler won't walk for 2 to 2.5 months. Booger said it took himself 9 months before it really felt good again. Booger then just texted, he's listening to the conversation, when mine popped, it looked like someone stole my kneecap. That's Booger's description. Again, all people are different, all injuries are different. Sure. No, this is not an exact diagnosis, but it is someone that...
But it is one of those injuries that you'll know it when the medical staff is out there and moving around the kneecap, and it's moving in ways that it shouldn't even think about moving and going sideways and such, and... You know what's going on, and you could see the reaction. You could see Joe Girardi out there. I mean, you kind of knew what was happening.
Here was Girardi after the game.
When something that big happens like that, are you just in disbelief the way it unfolds?
I was in tears, actually, because I know what it takes to get here and how hard he's worked, and what's supposed to be a really exciting day for him turns into a really bad day. So I'm still in disbelief. I'm in tears for the kid. I know he'll fight and get back here, but I mean he's out for a while, and he has to go through a long, grueling rehab, and it just doesn't seem fair that that's what happened.
Yeah, it is a long, grueling rehab. This is all about everything taking in that surgery and healing up. That's why a lot of times, depending on the surgery and the injury you see today, they want to get that moving as quickly as possible and start the rehab. This you're going to have to be immobile. This they're going to I would imagine, cast it up. He can't move that thing. He's got to let everything set and start to heal in there before he can start the rehab. So for a 22-year-old with a ton of energy and ready to go, I mean, it's going to be an awful, awful lot of downtime and patience and blood, sweat, and tears all alone that he's going to be going through.
Aaron Judge was DHing last night, which is why the kid was in right. Aaron Judge says, I didn't see the play, nor do I want to see it. Makes you sick. About to debut, about to lead off the next inning, and something like that happens. I was sick to my stomach. Brett Gardner said, it's one of the worst things I've seen on a baseball field. I can't imagine a worse scenario for him. It's heartbreaking. He's a good kid and a really, really good player with a bright future. Again, he was scheduled to lead off the top of the second inning.
You know, again, it's tough. This is a situation you see guys, draft picks. Dante Fowler, what did he go, number 2 or 3 to Jacksonville a couple of years ago? He's in OTAs. They're not even in pads, and he blows his knee out, and he misses a year. I mean, unfortunately, you see this stuff happen over and over again to young guys, old guys, but we're talking about a young guy here just starting his career. Then all of a sudden you're on the shelf having to make a comeback right off the bat.
All right, I told you we are putting the Shell Pinto performance line to the test here this hour on Mike and Mike. We were just in Brisbane, Australia with Joe Tessitore, and now we are going to Egypt, where USA Basketball's under-19 team is being coached by Kentucky coach John Calipari, who's good enough to jump in with us. I have no idea what time it is in Egypt right now. How are you, Coach? What time is it where you are?
It is 1:30. We just left the pyramids and I was on a camel, so I'm ready to go. It's on right now.
So before we get into any of this basketball stuff, I mean, I've never been there, and I want to go to the pyramids. Just give me a little bit on the pyramids and just how cool they are.
Well, they're not cool. It's really hot. But it's amazing when you see them that they built all this stuff, 2,000 years ago or more, and didn't have all the tools. How they lifted the stone and all the other stuff, it's just amazing. They tell the story, and you sit there and you're just shaking your head like, that's crazy. It's neat, though. It's great for the kids. Each of them got on a camel, and, so it was, we've had a couple friendlies with their scrimmages against a couple teams, France and Lithuania. So we had a day off and tried to take them out, let them see the country a little bit.
It's really nice. Mike and Mike presented by Progressive Insurance. Coach Cal is with us. Let's get the business we have to get out of the way so we can get to what I really wanted to talk to you about. You're aware that there was a report yesterday linking your name to the vacant president of basketball operations job with the New York Knicks. What can you tell us?
Well, I can tell you my phone blew up at 4:45 here, and I had to tweet out, which is great about social media. You can cut stuff off when it's not true. But there's no one that, on my behalf, that called the Knicks. And there may be a college coach who has inquired about it. It wasn't me. I called my wife, and I said, was it you? But no, and I called my son. He hadn't called me back, so maybe my son had. No. I'm in Egypt, and it's funny that I get thrown into stuff even when I'm out of the country.
Is it fair to say at the end of each season or when the NBA gets in this position that you get contacted or your people maybe get contacted or back channels, whatever, each year about inquiring whether you want to go back to the NBA?
I don't think every year, but there have been times when it's happened. And, the thing I always say is, because of what happens for me every year, that I'm in that green room trying to help my kids get drafted. I like to have relationships with those owners and those GMs and presidents so that on draft night I can pick up the phone and call somebody and say, hey, what are you thinking about my guy? We had 3 guys go in the lottery, and, all of them, our kids have, had a bunch of them in there, and that's good for us. So, but the reality of it is I'm coaching at Kentucky. Come on. In my mind, I got the best job in the country. It's been a great opportunity for young people to come in and better themselves and better their lives. It's an unbelievable stage to challenge them in so many ways. And I just can't see there's anything out there that I would want to leave for.
Mike and Coach Cal, he's in Egypt. Okay, so then let's get to what I really wanted to ask you about today. We had Mike Krzyzewski on a couple of weeks ago, and he talked really eloquently and passionately about his belief of where college basketball needs to go. And the two primary things he talked about were a baseball-like system where players could go right out of high school to the NBA if they choose, and if not, if they come to college, they have to make some sort of more significant commitment than they currently make, which is a one-year deal. I think he talked about 2 years. I know you've talked a little bit about the possibility of 3, which is what baseball does. And he also talked about an idea that maybe basketball needs to some degree, break away a little bit from the rest of the NCAA and have a person in charge who is sort of I'm not sure what term it would be, a commissioner of sorts of big-time college basketball because of the particulars of that sport, versus some of the other non-revenue sports. And it was an interesting conversation, and it's something that I think is evolving. So I'd like to ask you, when you look down the road 10 years from now, maybe you're in it, maybe you're not, what do you think college basketball looks like 10 years from now from those standpoints?
Well, I don't know exactly, but what I'm hoping is we're worried about one thing and how we're preparing these young men for what they want to do and for life after basketball. Look, I don't think the one and done is broke. I say this, like my kids have all finished the term. We have guys on a lifetime scholarship. We've had 3 or 4 already start that path back where they're taking a class or 2. I mean, I think my kids have gone in the league and every one of our lottery picks has gotten to a second contract. So to say they're not prepared, it becomes a gap year. It's a gap year for them. And my hope is if they want kids to go out of high school, I'm good with that if they take them in the NBA. But now I have a problem if they're looking to draft kids out of high school and put them in the D-League. And the reason is the NCAA about 10 years ago came up with an academic structure where they raised all these standards. And I was totally against it because I thought we needed to have more of a net, not less of a net. And I thought kids would get caught and it would not be good for kids from different places. So my thing right now, you look back on that, the NCAA did right. Now, how many times have you ever heard me say the NCAA did right? They did right because we just had the highest graduation rate in men's basketball in the NCAA history for African-American kids. The highest. Now, if you're telling kids, hey, man, don't worry about going to school. We're going to put you in the D-League, and you're going to last a year or 2. Hopefully you make it. Probably about 5 or 8% of you will. The rest of you figure out life on your own. I mean, I don't like that. Now, if you're telling me you're going to pay a kid $20 million to go to the league and you're going to figure it out, that's fine. But I'm not for them using the D-League for high school kids. Not at all. And I will go on record so that if we start doing that and kids as 8th, 9th, and 10th graders choose, I'm not going to go to school. Why would I go to school? I'm going to go to the D-League and be professional. Really? You're going to have 2 years to make it. It'll be a revolving door. It's not minor league baseball where you got 3 single A, double A, triple A. If they want to draft kids out of high school and put them directly in the NBA and pay them or go to college for a couple of years, I'm good with that. But not if they're going to use the D-League so that they have the assets themselves. See, I don't see them as assets. I've got someone's child, and my job is to help prepare them and get them right. And I always say this, if anybody doesn't like this system, don't recruit those kids. Go recruit 4-year players. There's no problem with that. You have choices here. But I don't think it's broke. But if there's a better way of doing this, which is getting kids directly to the league, if they chose to do that, I'd be fine with it.
Talking with John Calipari, Kentucky head coach. He's in Egypt right now with the U19 team. Oh, by the way, John has produced 21 first-rounders who have made $457 million. So it's working out well for the guys that you're coaching. And I guess that would be the thing everybody needs to think about is it's either unintended consequences or you could see that the potential happening. So because of that, and I get it because I get that would happen. I guess the thought is if you think it's only going to happen to a few people, is it still worth trying to make a change? Or do you think, hey, if just like you said,
right.
if this isn't broke right now, don't fix it?
We're talking 8 to 10 kids. Don't recruit those kids. Don't recruit them if you don't think you can deal with this. It's fine. But if you're telling me a kid can go directly to the NBA, be a 5th pick of the draft, and not a kid that does it. He goes undrafted. Now we're gonna put you in the D League for a couple of years, see if you can make it. Totally against it. Who's going to take care of these kids? Society. And I'll say it again. We just had the highest graduation rate for African American basketball players in the history of the NCAA. And I was against what the NCAA did, and I was wrong. They did right. You know what they did? They raised standards and made kids reach those standards. Now, there's an outlier who doesn't finish the term. My kids all finished the term. Every kid that left our program this year, we had 3 that graduated. The others that left, all 5, finished the term because they have a lifetime scholarship. I would say this. If you want to put high school kids in the D League, do what baseball does. You ready? Give them a signing bonus. Give them $1 million. Here's the other thing. Do what baseball does. Guarantee their education. So if they don't make it, you pay for their education. Now, I would say, okay, I'd be for that. It's just about the kids. It's not about an asset. It's not about NBA. It's not about college. It's about these kids. How do we make the game better? How about how we make their lives better? How about we do that?
The best of Mike and Mike.
I like that conversation with Calipari, too. You know, our conversation with Coach K a couple of weeks ago, these are the 2 guys who've benefited most, if you will, from the one and done. They get these players, they win championships with them, and then they send them off to the NBA where they make millions of dollars. All that seems to be working out very well. Now, you'll have people on the other side of it who will say that's even if they finish the term. And Coach K said, Calipari just said that all of his players did finish the term, and that's good, I guess, as opposed to not.
Right.
But it is still people going to college. And there's 2 things. Tell me if you agree with both these sentences. One, with no intention whatsoever of graduating.
None.
Now, that in and of itself isn't that terrible. When you're going to college, you don't have to go there with the intention of graduating, I guess, if you're genuinely interested in learning. And that brings us to the second one, which is people are going to college who really aren't going because they want to. They're going because they have to.
Right.
And that's the part of it where it feels like it stops making sense to me. Again, I'm one who says that it's not. It shouldn't be about what's best for the NBA, and it shouldn't be about what's best for the college coaches. It should be about what's best for each of the individuals making this decision on the one chance they get at life and a basketball career. So, in my opinion, to place any artificial restriction on these young men from letting them do whatever it is they feel is in their own best interest to do, I'm opposed to.
Yeah, I mean, I would agree with that, but to me, it involves so few people that it's really not enough to ruffle my feathers, quite honestly. It just doesn't involve enough people to where I'm going, do we change the whole system? Do we now let all these guys try and go from high school? Now, how many does it affect adversely? As opposed to 1 year out of college where you have the ability to go back to college. If you don't like where you worked out or what you look like, you can still stay in college. You leave high school, unless they work out rules where you don't give up your college eligibility. As Coach Cal said, if you go to the D League out of the high school and you don't make it, they're going to pay for your college. So you have at least the opportunity to do that. Then, in my opinion, by giving the freedom and the right to somebody right out of high school to go to play in the NBA, you may ultimately be hurting more people by giving them the opportunity and they're going to make the wrong choice. Now, as I said, you can just sit there and say, well, that's their choice to make. They have every right to make that choice. But then I think on the other side, is this so bad? Is this destroying people? Is this killing people? to do what we're doing now to maybe save from that side of it, where we're going to have maybe a whole lot of 18-year-olds that think they're going to play in the NBA by starting in the D-League, and then they got nowhere to go and nothing to do. So is that worth the trade-off? I mean, those are a lot of the things you have to think about.
I'd like to put together a committee to look into answers to those questions. And, Mike, if you have time, I'd like you to chair that committee.
Absolutely, positively not.
All right, let's do over-unders. Mike and Mike, we're brought to you by La Quinta. Book at LQ.com and win at business. The staff has put together some over-unders for us. Here we go.
Over!
The over-under on the number of years that Chris Paul will play in Houston, 1.5. And you weren't here yesterday, but all the speculation, because he kept his bird rights and he kept the ability to become a free agent next year intact. It's sort of like buying himself a shot at this. 1 year with Harden, it works great. It doesn't. Boom, he's on anywhere he wants to go.
But, we'll have free agents next year, so I think a lot will depend on if they can get anybody to come down there as well. I'm going to say under.
I'm going to say under also. I think he's, to use the conversation we were just having, he's one and done in Houston. Next, the over-under on the number of seasons Doc Rivers will remain as president and coach of the Clippers at 1.5.
Under.
You think next year's his last year?
I think, yes, it is going to be his last year. I think they're going to – this team already from the player side, Chris Paul gone, we're going to see what happens with Blake Griffin. They're just going to start to go in another direction.
I agree. It's 2 for 2 that we agree on. I will take the under. The over-under on the number of seasons that Coach Calipari will remain at Kentucky at 1.5.
That's a tougher one. I think Saban is not going back to the NFL at all. Saban is, 65, 64, did we determine?
He's older.
Calipari is 58. Calipari's had the stint in the NBA. Does he want to go back and try and be more successful? Because if he goes back, he'll probably be given the GM and or president job as well as a head coach and make a ton of money. Not that he's hurting for money now. I think it would be more of, does he want to go succeed in the NBA? I think at some point you wonder if you just say where I am is cool, but you dig the attention at times. I'm going to say over. I'm going to say he's going to stay.
We're 3 for 3. I agree on over. I don't know that I think he'll be there the rest of his career, but I think he'll be there 2 more years. Next, you might have seen the news that Bartolo Colon was designated for assignment by the Braves yesterday. He's 44 years old. Expected to clear waivers. Maybe the Mets will bring him back. Putting the over-under at 0.5 on how many more starts in the majors Bartolo Colon at the age of 44 will make.
So we're asking if he'll make one more start. I think he'll make one more start.
I agree, because I think the Mets are hoping, we keep agreeing on every one of these. The Mets are hopelessly out of it, or certainly they will be soon.
Right.
The fans loved him.
Good way to end it.
Just bring him back and let him pitch. What have he got to lose? Right. Everybody so enjoyed it.
Pitch. Let him hit. Let him hit another home run.
Fair. All right, last one. We're at the over-under on the number of hot dogs that Golic could eat is set in 10 minutes. Is set at 19.5. Could you eat
with the hot dog?
Over or under? Hot dog contest is this weekend.
19.5 in 10 minutes. I don't know. That 2 a minute? Be a tough call. I don't know if I could do it. I don't know if I'm not a professional eater. I mean, I can eat a lot, but that's a lot of hot dogs in 10 minutes. I don't think I could do it. I think it would be under. I think I could be in the mid-teens.
You know what's disappointing? We agreed on every one of these. I agree. I do not think you would get there. And if you did, I think it would be just hideous.
Oh, the reversal would be horrible.
About 4 minutes later.
Okay, Kevin, for the grand prize of $1 million, what color is the White House?
I know this.
5 seconds.
Oh, switching to Geico could save you a bunch of money on car insurance?
Okay. Judges? That's true, Kevin. They'll allow it. Congratulations. You're a winner.
Woo!
Geico, because saving 15% or more on car insurance is always a great answer.
Daryl Morey, the general manager of the Rockets, is on the way shortly. They made the big deal this week with Chris Paul, and I liked what he said. I happen to like Daryl. I only got to know him a little because he's a Northwestern guy, so we were in Salt Lake City together for the Northwestern tournament games, and we were just chatting a little bit. So I'm inclined to like him. But what he said about Chris Paul, you weren't here yesterday, Mike, but what he said was basically this. The question was, why didn't you wait for him to become a free agent? And to be clear, Chris Paul wasn't doing this as a free agent. Chris Paul manipulated the system. He's the president of the PA. He understands it brilliantly.
Yeah, he did.
He had to do it the way he did it in order to maintain his bird rights and maintain the ability to be a free agent again next year. You can't play the system any better than he did. But Daryl was basically saying, in the pursuit of a player like that, you don't sit back and wait until free agency begins because you never know. Even if his intention is to come here, he gets a call, he takes a meeting, and the next thing you know, he hears something he doesn't like, which is the same point I've been making about the Lakers with Paul George.
Different trade.
But, okay,
different.
My point is, now you Paul George, you wait and you see if he winds up going to Boston. Let's say he does. Let's say he goes to Cleveland and he plays with LeBron. Let's say he goes to Houston and he plays with Chris Paul and James Harden. How do you know they don't mess around and win the championship? And now he's like, we've won the championship. I'm playing with these guys. I really like it here. Why am I going to L.A.? Maybe that was my childhood dream, but now I found a better situation and he stays. You tell me. What do you?
I don't know. You got Randall. You got Ingram. You got Lonzo Ball. You giving up those guys?
Well, I mean, Magic just introduced Lonzo Ball as the future of the franchise, so he's not trading Lonzo.
You're not getting Paul George for a ham sandwich.
Well, you might.
No, you won't.
The Pacers have to trade Paul George.
The Lakers said, if I were the Lakers, they're doing exactly what I thought. Try and steal him without giving up anything big because you're still building. I mean, I'm Magic Johnson, as illegal as it is. I'm finding a way to talk to Paul George and say, you want a good team when you get here? Don't make us trade all the pieces to get you. Or you're just starting over. You're not even starting over again. Now you're getting a guy, I know he's not old at 27, but you're going to have to give up some of your 20, 21, and 22-year-olds to get him.
Look, obviously, you know that, I know that, and Paul George knows that. So this probably doesn't have to be explained to him. The point is, what is the expression about a bird in the hand? At the end of the day, let me ask you this. If Paul George goes, I'm just making this up, to Cleveland, and he and LeBron are godfathers to each other's children, and they're unbelievable together, and they win the championship next year, beating mighty Golden State, is he then packing up and saying, you know what, my dream was always to go out to L.A., so I'm going to go play with Lonzo,
I don't know,
and Brandon, and Julius.
The way everybody's talking, LeBron's going out there too.
Well, but maybe not. I mean, that's the point. Or they go together.
I understand you're rolling the dice. I am not giving up my major assets, my young major assets I want to build around in L.A. to make that move.
Did you hear about the family strife being created by the free agency of Gordon Hayward? Gordon Hayward's impending free agency has caused a public tug-of-war in the Ainge family.
It has.
Celtics president of basketball operations Danny Ainge is awaiting his chance to make a pitch to Hayward after free agency begins tonight. But Danny Ainge's son Tanner is running for Congress in Utah. And he has repeatedly expressed a desire for Hayward to stay with the Jazz. In fact, late Wednesday night, Tanner Ainge tweeted at Hayward with a link to a news story about how Massachusetts is considering a millionaire's tax that could eventually elevate the tax burden for high earners. So he's basically telling Hayward and the world, hey, Gordon, you can go play for my dad, and it's going to cost you a fortune in taxes to go play in Massachusetts, or you can re-sign here in Utah where I'm running for Congress, and it'll cost you a lot less in state taxes.
Anyway, that Tanner is doing more than just saying how much it'll cost you, and maybe spilling some things about Dad and Danny, and saying you don't want to go there. This is what you'll get from Danny. This is what you're going to get, and maybe telling some bad stories about him.
I don't think so. No, I don't think so. You know what I think it is?
What?
I think this is one of the great campaign moves of all time. He's running for Congress. You want to talk about seeing an opportunity and taking it.
Yeah.
Now he's the guy who's campaigning to keep Gordon Hayward in Utah.
Right. So then if Gordon Hayward leaves, then all the voters are going to say you couldn't even keep Gordon Hayward in Utah.
Or they're going to say at least he tried to keep Gordon Hayward in Utah.
You say tomato, I say tomato.
You tell me, is Gordon Hayward staying in Utah?
Hell no.
How much difference in the taxes would it have to make for you to stay in Utah?
Well, I mean,
how much would you take into account state tax? Like, why doesn't every NBA player look? If you're Gordon Hayward and you can go to you can go to Massachusetts,
right,
where there's going to be a millionaire's tax.
Expensive.
I'd be lying if I said I knew everything about that.
Yes.
You can go play for Miami, where Pat Riley is down there with a great coach in Eric Spoelstra and a good big and a couple of decent pieces. And you have no state tax.
I've always said, and it will never change, players have different reasons for different things. You can go for money, and you can make more money by going to where you can get paid the same, but it can be more in one spot if there's no taxes. Is that the important thing to you?
Well, let's figure out.
Are you closer to a championship in Boston, and is that important to you?
Let's figure out, over the course of a 4-year max contract, which I assume is what he could get in Boston, what would be the difference, roughly, in the state tax in Massachusetts versus paying no state tax in Florida, right? Because you basically have to attach that to the contract.
I'll have that for you in 30 seconds.
Perfect. And then Daryl Morey will join us right after that.
The best of Mike and Mike.
The story of my life. Mike and Mike presented by Progressive Insurance. Daryl Morey, General Manager, Houston Rockets, live in a minute on the Shell Pennzoil Performance Line. How we worked our way to that conversation you just heard at the end of the Open was kind of silly and ridiculous.
Yes, it was.
It did result in a pretty decent place.
Yeah.
And it's sort of a good illustration of the difference in the young lives of a Greeny and a Golic.
Right. You're talking of a moped that never had a girl, gave a girl a ride on your moped to your imaginary girlfriends and friends for that matter.
Right. We had very different lives. You were a football player, you're the star of the football team, the captain of the football team.
One of my favorite jobs, too, I was a lifeguard.
Yeah, see, lifeguard.
Really.
How great would that have been?
Yeah, I really enjoyed that.
I worked in my parents' bookstore.
Yeah, that had to be good.
Well, I mean, I did love the store, and I'm proud of it. I don't want to make jokes about it, but
your
working
parents,
in that
great
bookstore,
people. You working in that bookstore, the only thing I can think of is nerd alert.
It was not the most. Yeah. It wasn't the kind of thing that attracted a lot of the ladies. You know what I mean? I didn't have groupies. If you know what I mean, hanging around there. All right, drive me off this picture. Let's get Daryl Morey into the conversation. The Houston Rockets, an extraordinarily aggressive move the other day, bringing in Chris Paul, who will team with James Harden for a backcourt that people are talking about as the best in the sport and potentially one of the best ever. Their GM, Daryl Morey, is with us on the Shell Pennzoil Performance Line. Good morning, Daryl.
Good morning. Thanks for having me on.
Always a pleasure. So let's start with this. Obviously, you take two individual stars. Sounds like a no-brainer, but they are two guys who play with the basketball in their hands. So give me a sense of the conversations that you and Mike D'Antoni had before you made the decision to go out and make this deal about how he envisions the two of those guys playing together.
Coach D'Antoni, it was a pretty simple conversation. We talked about bringing him in, and obviously the fact that both of them are the two best in the game with the ball, arguably. And Mike said, Daryl, don't even think about it. I know it'll work. I've worked with both of them together on USA Basketball. It's a no-brainer. This is going to be a tremendous upgrade.
And certainly giving up players to get that, I would imagine if you could take us through the process of knowing, as you were doing this, knowing that there was still plenty more to do.
Yeah, we obviously right now we have 6 rotation players, obviously 6 very good ones in our minds, but we got a long way to go from 6 to 15. One of the reasons we did this trade early is it gives us our mid-level, our biannual. We got non-bird. We also have a trade exception in the 10 to 12 million range. So we got to go and try and get closer to Golden State by rounding our roster out 8 to 10 and seeing if we can do any other upgrades.
This is the business of basketball, and that's the terminology of it. Daryl Morey, the highly successful general manager of the Rockets. Only the Spurs and Celtics have a better record in the league than his teams do since he became the GM in 2007. It's interesting.
I correct you. Second best. I'm ahead of the Celtics. Come on, man.
Ahead of the Celtics. Wait, no. So now we're going to get a dispute here between Hembo.
Boy.
And our researcher, Hembo, you should know, he worships you, okay? He is the king of analytics. He is the analytics star on our team here. So, Hembo, we've got a dispute here. You tell me. Morey says he's ahead of the Celtics, so we're going to get an official number here, and we'll see who's right. One way or another, you're doing okay.
I do love the Celtics. They gave me my first job. So
let me ask you this, though.
Spurs are ahead of all of us. Hopefully one day we can be them. They're amazing. So.
All right, fair enough. Let me ask you about this part of it, though. You mentioned the Warriors directly. How has what they have done informed the rest of the league's act? How much of them forming that group has dictated to you what you must do from the seat in which you sit?
Yeah, very much. I mean, if you have a star in his prime like we do with James Harden and now with Chris Paul, you have to be all in, but it's a daunting task. I mean, we're hoping to get to that 60-win level where generally in NBA history, if you get to the 60-win level, you've got a really good shot at hoisting the trophy at the end of the year with Golden State and Cleveland and the Spurs in the league right now. But Golden State obviously being the most daunting juggernaut of all of them. Even a 60-win team has far lower odds than at any other point in NBA history.
So, Daryl, talking about the all-in mentality of today, in when you talk with ownership about it, and I completely understand the numbers of it, all the different things you said you could still have available, the numbers you have to work with contracts. But the all-in of today, does there have to be a discussion with the owner that says, hey, if we're going to beat this team in Golden State that's doing what they're doing, we're going to have to pay a decent amount of luxury tax. You're just going to have to be willing to write that extra check to get all the talent that we need to compete in the NBA right now. Is that a conversation?
Yeah, absolutely. It's not just luxury tax. That's actually never a conversation with my owner because he's been spending big time since I got here 11 years ago. And, it's not just luxury tax. It's like right before that trade, we did 6 trades. Before we did the Chris Paul trade, we spent, around $3 million acquiring players around the league so that we could create another ability to go get another big-time rotation player. So it's, the spending is sort of a given, and I'm blessed to have owner Leslie Alexander who lets me do what I need to do.
And along those lines, in the time of free agency, when you're going to recruit players and wine them and dine them and try and bring them in that conversation, is it brought up? Is it used that, hey, you come play here, there's no state tax, you can make more money? I mean, is that in actuality part of a discussion?
Yeah, it is actually. It's not just on the court. It's a lot of, especially big-time players, it's off the court. And, we can't do much more than just point out the fact that obviously Texas is a big tax advantage state. And, in this competition of 30 where only one team wins, you have to use every tool to your advantage. And we obviously point that out to players.
Mike and Mike, Daryl Morey with us. We're presented by Progressive Insurance. He's the GM of the Rockets. Free agency starts tonight, 12:01. So just take our listeners places they can't normally go. What are you doing at 12:01? What is the general manager of an NBA team doing at exactly 12:01 tonight?
Usually you're on the West Coast, so that 12:01 is 9:01 p.m. So that's a more reasonable hour. I'd say the epicenter of NBA free agency is generally Los Angeles. A lot of the agents are there. A lot of the players are there. And again, you can have a dinner at 9:15 or so, 9:30, and just sit down with the players. So tonight we're hoping to meet with some players in Los Angeles. Maybe 9:30, 10 o'clock, and then Saturday hoping to meet with 3 or 4 more in Los Angeles, and often you do have to fly to other cities as well. I think, in years past, I started in L.A., end up in Orlando, then Vegas, then back to New York, then back to Los Angeles. It's a lot of flights, because we like to meet people in person. Some teams, do their business more over the phone.
And knowing the competition, especially in those first couple days, is just there's so many people involved, and whether it's dinners or phone calls. Are you, again, for our listeners and viewers that will never be in this position, when you talk to these players, whether it's a max deal or not, is it right away you are offering? I mean, you are throwing out there what you're willing to offer, so there's no real game because you're in competition with these other teams?
Yeah, the first day or two, you're pretty much out there with offers right away, and often those are dictated by the collective bargaining agreement. Either it's a max player, so you're giving them the max, or you have the tools like we do, mid-level biannual, where the number is set, and you're actually hoping that they take a little less with you at that number relative to teams with full cap room can give them. So a lot of times the CBA dictates the number. I would say that's about 60-70% of the time. The rest of the time, yeah, you're fighting on numbers between 1 and 10 million, where you're debating with the agent back and forth. But that usually hits, maybe days, a little bit into day 2, maybe through days, 5 or so.
So along those days, if I'm not getting a call until after the 4th of July, I'm going to be disappointed.
Oh, if you're not getting a call before the 4th of July, you're probably not even getting minimum, frankly. So it's not. You should probably be looking at Europe at that point.
Yes. Story of my life. Okay.
Mike and Northwestern's own Daryl Morey, the general manager of the Rockets, and so that's of course free agency. I'm sorry.
I said go Cats.
Oh yeah, absolutely. So that's free agency. Then of course there is trades, and yours is a team that has been highly rumored to be involved in potential deals for players who might require trades. So I know you can't comment on individual players who are currently under contract to other teams, but take us to that process. How does that work? How does that ramp up at 12:01? Is that something that is already being done? How does the trade piece of this thing work?
Well, trades you're allowed to talk about earlier. So, yeah, all those bigger names that everyone sees in the news right now, that want to change team, those conversations have been going on for quite a while at this point. So that's an ongoing discussion where, depending on the GMs involved and their personal styles, sometimes it can go longer, sometimes it can go quicker. When the Clippers approached us about maybe doing an opt-in trade with Chris Paul, I mean, we moved very quickly because we knew if it got to free agency, now we're competing with all 30 teams to sign him. So opt-in trade was something that was very attractive, and it also left us with lots of flexibility to get free agents, tomorrow, or I guess today and tomorrow, relative to we would have just had minimums otherwise.
I'm wondering, as a GM, when you call other GMs, have you, at one point or another, never gotten a return call from someone or never returned a call to someone? Or do you guys always return each other's calls?
Yeah, if it's a call saying please call, that's always returned. But if there's a call where you say, hey, this is what we're offering, or this is the concept we're working on, sometimes you won't get a return call. There are a few GMs, and I've talked to my baseball brethren that sort of do this. They'll try and sort of see if you'll call again, just to see how desperate you are. I mean, it's not my personal style. It's not the style I like. I think it's a repeating game with really important relationships. So I'm pretty careful not to do that. But that is a strategy, to just see, how many times a guy will call, and maybe they'll reveal they're desperate or overly motivated.
Daryl Morey, who is the leader of the analytics movement in basketball, his team made 209 mid-range field goals last year. That's fewer than 10 individual players in the league. So with that in mind, you should know that our researcher, Paul Hembekides, Hembo, the Greek god of stats, he is dying to work for you. His whole life is analytics, and so here's what he came up with. The announcement of your elevation to being the Rockets general manager was made on May 10th, 2007. If we begin the clock on that day, the Spurs' winning percentage is .714, which is obscene. The Celtics are .598. The Rockets are .595. However, if you include the Rockets' record from the previous month, then Morey is correct, second only behind the Spurs. Is that level of attention to detail good enough to get him a job working in the analytics department of your team?
It sounds like get him an interview. I'd love to meet him. So
okay.
Hopefully I play him on the road.
We'd like you to meet him, too, because we don't want him anymore.
That could be a win-win, if you know what I'm saying. All kidding aside, Daryl, thank you so much for doing this. Congratulations on the big deal. People will be keeping a very close eye on what you and your team do in the coming days and all of the coming season. Best of luck.
Thanks, Daryl.
Appreciate it. Thanks for having me on.
That's Daryl Morey, the general manager of the Rockets. He's just a smart, interesting guy. You talk to him, he's just an interesting guy.
I really wondered about those questions. If you're a free agent, like you said, if you're not getting a call before 4th of July, forget it. So, I mean, as you're sitting there waiting, and how quickly do you throw out numbers, or how quickly is the dance? And obviously it would seem the higher the person, the quicker the number goes up, but who you're competing with. And then I thought the interesting thing with the GMs, and he's right, it is a repeating business. You're going to have to always deal with these guys. But I always wondered if GMs played games. Like you said, some can just throw something out, kind of like throwing that bait out there to see if you're going to bite on it and keep calling back. I kind of like that behind-the-scenes stuff.
Well, I mean, there has to be, for lack of I don't mean this in a literal sense, but there has to be some honor among thieves here because, if I make some sort of very dishonest deal with you. I'm a GM, you're a GM. They can do that once.
I agree with that.
But you're not going to get to do it a second time.
Right.
And
but you always want to try and get the better of the deal. You can all sit there and say, hey, we'd love it to be a win-win. But, each person who has a phone up to their ear wants to get the better of the deal.
Look, when it comes to the really big-name NBA players, these players are dictating this stuff themselves.
They are.
You heard what he said. The Clippers called me and said, hey, you want to do this deal with Chris Paul?
Yeah.
I mean, that was, that's not – this is the way the NBA works now. If you're Chris Paul, if you're Paul George, if you're Carmelo Anthony, if you're LeBron James, if you're in that strata of player. And so that's what we have. And let me ask you a question.
And that's, by the way, the strata of players that need to come together to win right now.
Of course. That's where the league is, and that actually leads me directly to the question I was just going to ask you. I tweeted something yesterday through the 1-800-Flowers.com Twitter feed, mine, yours, and everyone else's. And I tweeted, if I could put these teams together, I would put Carmelo on the Cavs and Paul George on the Rockets. A lot of people are looking at Paul George on the Cavs. My personal opinion is the following. The single biggest problem the Cavaliers had in the finals last year against Golden State was not their inability to defend on the perimeter. Their biggest problem was that every time LeBron James went to the bench, they couldn't do anything offensively. I mean, nothing. Right? Remember the one game they won?
Yeah.
He sat down for 1 minute at the beginning of the fourth quarter. Their lead went from like 21 to 9 in a minute. You put Carmelo Anthony on the floor, that's not going to happen. You have another viable scoring option. I'll figure out the rest of it from there.
I couldn't disagree more. Holy smokes.
Go ahead, tell me.
You got a black hole in Carmelo Anthony that you hope he makes a shot.
He's not a black hole if he's playing with LeBron and Kyrie. He's not.
No. You just said when LeBron's not on the court.
Well, that's only like 2 minutes at a time.
But you're the one who brought up the scenario, not me.
But to me, that's a valuable role that he immediately plays.
Paul George can give you offense and can defend on the other side when LeBron's not on the court for his 2 minutes and when he's playing with LeBron. To me, it's not even close of who I would rather have on that team as far as trying to beat Golden State in the finals. It's Paul George over Carmelo Anthony without question.
Well, I think Paul George has a better chance of going down to Houston because I think if you're Paul George, if I'm Paul George right now and I'm going someplace for 1 year and 1 year only, I think I'd go to Houston.
LeBron James. I'm going to play with LeBron James in the East, knowing I can get to the finals, knowing I'm going to get a shot at the championship, instead of going to the West and hoping I can get through Golden State just to make it to the finals where I'm going to play against LeBron.
Well, that would be
to me, it's not even a question.
Swinging 2 bats in the on-deck circle. I think that Paul George, Chris Paul, and James Harden right now is a dynamite big three.
Beating Golden State.
Dynamite. I give him a shot. Sure. It depends on what you put around them.
Well, it sure does.
Well, I mean, and that's part of the challenge here. But they've got other players, and I don't think Daryl Morey is done here.
More. If I'm Paul George and I know I'm going to the Lakers,
but let's even put that aside.
Cleveland right now.
So forgetting I said that because it misdirected us from the point I wanted to make. I then followed it up with a tweet that said, "The rest of the league might as well just go home." I mean, the rest of the league might as well just not even bother.
Well, no.
So here's what I want to know: if you're a hardcore basketball fan right now in 22 cities. What are you thinking?
Here's what I'm thinking.
Go.
I'm thinking I have to be in the best position I can for the next 2 or 3 years. Okay? And that's where I bring up the Lakers. And I bring up the Lakers and not trading your assets. All this talk of Golden State for the next 5 to 7 years to me is ludicrous. They may lose Iguodala now, and in a couple more years, let's see what that team looks like. Okay? So for the Lakers, let's just pick them. You've got Ingram, you've got Randall, you've got Lonzo as young players who have now given them a couple of years to play together and develop. If Paul George comes to you next year and can play with them for yet another year and get them playing together and be ready and play and get better. Listen, because I understand what you're saying. What are we playing for now? You're playing for when Golden State isn't Golden State. Whether you like it or not, and whether you enjoy watching the regular season or the postseason, blah, 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 that's the reality. And that's the reality 29 teams have to deal with. What are we going to do now? How close are we? If you're Cleveland, you load up and try and beat them. San Antonio is always in the mix, and they're always going to try and do that. If you're Phoenix, you try and put pieces together for the future, obviously, which is going to be in a couple of years when Golden State doesn't have all their guys. And if you're the Lakers, that's what you do. That's why you don't trade those guys away to get Paul George now, because you're not beating Golden State now, and then you have to get younger players again and build for a couple of years when Golden State isn't Golden State. So that's what the teams are doing right now.
But those are the teams that players will eventually go to. How about if you're in Utah and you've got Danny Ainge's son campaigning, for Congress and campaigning to keep Gordon Hayward there? You've done the best you can do.
Yeah.
We've just seen now the apex because you drafted a guy in Gordon Hayward, you built around him, you developed him into an NBA star, or at least to the extent that he's going to get a max contract.
Yeah.
You made it all the way to fourth. Were they the fourth or the fifth seed in the East? They were on the road in Game 7. They were fifth.
Right.
You made it all the way to fifth, but they were like neck and neck for 4. And they win a series.
Yes.
And now he's going to leave, and now you're done. So that's it. You've now seen the elevator gone to the top floor of what the Utah Jazz, a franchise that had Karl Malone and John Stockton and went to back-to-back finals 20 years ago. That's the elevator going to the ceiling of what that team can accomplish in the modern NBA.
No, it's not, because you have a couple of teams to look at. What's been a putrid team not going anywhere? Minnesota. Look at them now, and it takes time. Look at Philadelphia. Sam Hinkie again. I mean, he's not there anymore, but and you hated it when it was going on, but look where the potential is right now. So unfortunately, that's the realistic view that you have to take, that it may take a while, and we're going to lose our guy here. But, boy, if it starts with that one, Karl Anthony Towns, you had Wiggins there, you trade, you get Jimmy Butler, and all of a sudden, what are we talking about with Minnesota? What's the last time we were talking about Minnesota?
Well, Kevin Garnett in 15 years ago.
You know who else we're talking about?
15, 16.
You know who else we're talking about? Milwaukee. Look at what the Greek Freak, did they build around him? How does that work? Philadelphia, we're talking about. So it takes time. It takes a lot of patience, and it's probably going to take a lot of people getting angry with the way it's going on. But that's the way to at least try and do it in today's game.